It would seem as though legal troubles may be brewing for Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot, as a scandal in a case going all the way back to 2020 continues to haunt the company, and rightfully so. You may recall that back in 2020, Ubisoft underwent this whole scandal concerning allegations of harassment and all of the failures on the part of leadership and HR to keep employees safe from essentially really toxic behavior on the part of leadership and people in positions of power. There was just a ton of inappropriate behavior that was taking place on top of discrimination, and just about the worst you can imagine. All of that was ousted by employees, and it became this huge movement against Ubisoft. So powerful was this movement that it ultimately led to the resignation of Ubisoft executives who were once upon a time deemed to be untouchable. Folks such as Serge Hascoët and Thomas Francois, with Hascoët in particular having been a huge part of games getting greenlit at Ubisoft. He kind of spearheaded the gaming division. Ubisoft, in many ways, he defined the roadmap of game releases at that company, and he made decisions as to what games got made and what games didn't. This was a years-long scandal to the point where even in 2022, Ubisoft was answering questions about this whole situation, like this instance when during a Q&A at a media event in 2022, CEO Yves Guillemot said that yes, we stumbled and we have acknowledged that. We learned a lot along the way, and we've made meaningful progress with concrete action plans to tackle toxic culture, to tackle the harassment, the inappropriate behavior, the misconduct, the discrimination. But then an organization started by current and former Ubisoft employees, A Better Ubisoft, it's called. They claim that their concerns were not in fact heard, and that while many abusers at Ubisoft were axed, some were simply moved to new roles, different studios, or even promoted, and also alleged that the HR people who dismissed their complaints and protect abusers were still at the company, so essentially nothing had changed. Now, eventually, some of the executives who are most responsible for that kind of toxic work culture and all of the inappropriate behavior, all of the harassment, all of the discrimination, they were eventually taken to court in France, and they actually did get their just desserts. Back in March 10th, 2025, French news outlet Le Monde reported that 3 of Ubisoft's former executives who were in positions of great power were taken to court. They would essentially stand trial for the crimes that they were accused of and see what consequences they would end up facing. We're talking about folks like Serge Hascoët, former chief creative officer and the company's second in command. We got Thomas Francois, former vice president of editorial and creative services. And we got Guillaume Patru, who is another former senior executive. All of them actually face trial. And then on July of 2025, justice would finally be served, as those 3 former Ubisoft executives would indeed be found guilty and sentenced. In this Video Games Chronicle article, you can see what each respective guilty party did, what they perpetuated, what kind of awful behavior they engaged in that led to this deliberation. In terms of consequences, Francois faced 3-year suspended prison sentence and a fine of $35,209. Hascoët, he received an 18-month suspended prison sentence and a fine of $52,930. And Patru faced a 12-month suspended prison sentence and a fine of $11,760. Now, I'll be honest, I do think that these folks deserve worse than this sentence. The fines are minuscule compared to the amount of money that these executives made at Ubisoft. And then there's the suspended prison sentence, which doesn't actually send them to prison, but rather they have to adhere to a certain code of conduct and do things like community service and be on good behavior. And if they violate that, then they are taken to prison. But given all of the crimes that they committed and how long they've been doing that for, I think they deserved worse than this, but something is better than nothing. And ultimately, this will go on their record and their names will forever be tainted when it comes to, hiring prospects and employment prospects. These are folks that a lot of companies will want to avoid at all costs because it'd be a PR nightmare. So there's that. But yeah, all of this is related to today's story because Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot being summoned to court is related to that case that concerns that big scandal that continues to haunt Ubisoft to this day. Video Games Chronicle reports right here that Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot has been summoned to appear before French court in relation to the harassment trial. This will be happening relatively soon, with Guillemot having to appear before the court on October 1st, 2025 in connection to that same trial. And what lends some gravity to this situation is the fact that the subpoena for Yves Guillemot to appear was filed by the Solidaires Informatiques Union and 4 other individuals, the same parties involved in the previous trial. A trial that ultimately did result in convictions, that resulted in guilty verdicts, that resulted in punishments, fines, and sentences being doled out to guilty parties. So the question is, why is Ubisoft being dragged into court here? And, what is the case being made against them? And is Ubisoft's own CEO here in trouble? While there's no evidence to suggest that Yves Guillemot himself was directly doing the harassment and the misconduct and the inappropriate behavior and the discrimination and all these things, it doesn't change the fact that it all happened under his watch. It is entirely possible that he was looking the other way or protecting people who were clearly guilty parties, who were in positions of power that Yves Guillemot essentially enabled and let them do whatever they want. You as the leader letting something happen that is happening under your watch makes you guilty. So there's questions as to whether it's concerning that. Now, Video Games Chronicle did reach out to Ubisoft for a statement about all this, and a spokesperson had the following to say in regards to this situation. Quote, "A union and 4 individuals have issued summons to Ubisoft to appear before the Bobigny District Court on October 1st. These are the same civil parties, and this summons is based on the same facts as those in the case judged by the court this past June following an investigation by the Public Prosecutor's Office. After that investigation, and contrary to the civil parties' requests, the Public Prosecutor's Office decided that there were no grounds to initiate criminal proceedings against Ubisoft or its management, a decision it confirmed during its closing arguments at the hearing last June. But that doesn't mean that new information cannot come to light. We'll find out why Yves Guillemot was subpoenaed, why he's been summoned to court, and see if any developments ultimately lead to any prosecutions." The statement continues, "Ubisoft will continue to cooperate with the justice system in this matter, as it has done over the past 5 years in the review of the facts related to this case." I mean, it's not like you have a choice to cooperate with the justice system. That is a given. When you're subpoenaed, that is not an option. Subpoena is a mandate for you to show up to court, to cooperate with the court in accordance to what they require of you. And the question still remains, what does the court want from Yves Guillemot? We'll find out on October 1st. And then Ubisoft Executive Vice President Cécile Roussel added this quote to assure that Ubisoft is all about making sure that this is the best workplace possible, stating, quote, "Our top priority is to ensure the absolute protection of the physical and moral integrity of its employees through a policy of prevention and zero tolerance with regard to harassment, sexist behavior, assault, insult, or discrimination of any kind." Obviously, they're saying what they need to say for PR purposes to appear good, but this was certainly not the top priority when they were not facing any consequences, when, there weren't legal eyes on them, when employees weren't ousting them. They were more than happy to make this one of their bottommost priorities. What they're really saying here is we're going to say and do anything we can to avoid legal troubles that harm the company, because all this facade that they're putting on right now, it's all about protecting the corporation. They don't give 2 shits about the employees. They never have. For corporations, the employees are always a means to an end. It's why it's so easy for them to, let go of a bunch of employees even when they have record years. It's why it's so easy for them to let this kind of awful, toxic workplace fester and continue until the corporation is in trouble, until the PR gets bad, until they start to get in legal trouble. But when the human beings who are being afflicted by this bring this stuff up, unless it has any consequences to the corporation, they won't bat an eye in trying to protect employees, because it's just, it's too much of a waste of time. It's too inconvenient, and it doesn't serve the corporate agenda. But yeah, suffice to say that there's just been a lot of shadiness that's been happening behind the scenes at Ubisoft, and Yves Guillemot, having been CEO for quite a while now, all of it happening under his watch, he certainly bears a lot of the responsibility for all of the shady goings-ons. And then beyond that, you've got situations like this one that have cropped up recently, where Ubisoft named Yves Guillemot's son as co-CEO of new Tencent-backed subsidiary, which obviously creates concerns of nepotism. Was Charlie Guillemot, the son of Yves Guillemot, chosen for this leadership role because he genuinely earned that role, because he actually has the skill set to lead this subsidiary? or because he's Yves Guillemot's son. New Salad Variety asked Charlie Guillemot about concerns of nepotism, to which, of course, he denied all that and said that my name is not important. It's more about the work ahead, so on and so forth. He said, quote, "I'd like to address this question directly, if I may. I completely understand where it comes from, and I want to be clear about it. Yes, I'm Yves' son. That's not something I hide from, but my appointment isn't about family ties. It's about what Ubisoft needs at this moment." He continues, "I've spent the last decade building experience both inside and outside Ubisoft, leading teams, managing brands, and navigating change in a fast-moving industry. I also made the conscious choice to step away when it made sense to learn and grow elsewhere. What matters now isn't my name," he insists. "It's the work ahead. Ubisoft is at a pivotal moment. What's expected of me is to help push the company forward by bringing energy, focus, and by relying on the incredible expertise that already exists across the teams. I see myself as someone here to contribute, support, and help create the right conditions are in place for everyone to do their best work." Typical PR statement. So it's just controversy after controversy that builds up at Ubisoft, on top of all of the issues that the corporation is having because they haven't been able to deliver products that have sold at margins that they want. They've consistently had game releases flop, AAA high-profile ones at that. Ubisoft has also grown stagnant in their creativity, often recycling game concepts and game design elements that are just reused across other brands and IPs that almost all feel like they essentially play the same, just with a different skin and with a different theme and with a different IP coat of paint. But, just in general, it doesn't feel like Ubisoft has been pushing the boundaries of creativity with what can be achieved with this medium. And so people are they've grown disinterested in Ubisoft's products over the years. And so there's a steep climb up ahead for Ubisoft, who are in genuine trouble right now as a corporation. Their stock price is the lowest it's been in a very long time. And now the CEO himself getting subpoenaed in front of the French court to address more aspects about a case that has been haunting Ubisoft for 5 years because the scandal surrounding this culture of harassment and inappropriate behavior and misconduct and discrimination was just so severely awful and bad. For the CEO now to be subpoenaed and involved, and what might come of that, and the unknown elements of that, all of that contributes to a situation that's very unstable for Ubisoft at the moment. But only time will tell what will happen on October 1st when Ubisoft goes through the court proceedings, when Yves Guillemot fulfills what will be asked of him when he attends court. I'll keep you guys updated if any major developments happen on that front. But in the meantime, this is everything you need to know about the current state of Ubisoft and what's going on with the CEO and this court summons. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on all this and what you think is happening here. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.